Hello, Empowered Woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman podcast. Today, my guest is actually someone who has been on the show before, and I've been on her show. And recently, we reconnected and decided to do another swap as we've grown so much in the last few years in our entrepreneurial journey. And when I told a few friends and clients about her, they were like, "What? You know Stefanie Gass?" Yes, I got friends in high places. I got famous friends. Stef is so awesome. Chances are you know her too. She's an amazing Christian business coach, creator of Podcast Pro University and Podcast to Profit. Basically your go-to if you're wanting to start and leverage a podcast to grow your business. And this is exactly what we talked about. Stef shared her experiment of growing her business without social media, and it worked so well. Now she teaches it and uses podcasting instead. It's so good. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to start believing in yourself, giving yourself permission to succeed, and let your voice be heard to make an impact in the world as an entrepreneur, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, Stef. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Marta. I'm so excited to be here, back.
Oh my gosh, I know. She's back, friends.
Years later.
Years later. For those of you who don't know, I was just thinking about this after Nina contacted me, but context. For those of you who don't know, Stefanie, the amazing Stefanie Gass, was here on the show several years ago. I think it was the year that I got started, if not a year in. I don't even know. I probably should have looked before we got into this, but that is okay. And I remember one specific episode when I took a phone call with you at Walmart, because that is how crazy my life was, that I didn't have any kind of alone time in certain instances because triplets. And we were talking about podcasting and strategies and collaboration. And here we are, I don't know, 3-4 years later, and you've taken off, my sweet friend, with the podcasting world. And I'm so excited to do a catch-up interview and be like, what's going on? What's happening? So tell us who you are, what you do, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back. And you know what's so funny is Marta and I started our shows around the same time. I actually just looked, and you were episode 50 on my podcast back in April of 2019.
Okay.
And so I'm probably similarly in yours. And now to look up and go, wow, like if you just stay consistent and you just stay disciplined to the path that God has for your life, like look where you land. And so it's really fun to see all your success and see how mine has completely transitioned as well from where we started. So fun. Hi, everybody. I'm Stef, like Marta mentioned, and I help women get clear on their calling so that they can start a successful online business in less time. And I teach them to do it using podcasting. I'm super passionate about that because I thought that I had to build a business on social media. I thought that I had to buy into the hustle harder lies, and I was burnt out, exhausted. I experienced success and the world's way, and by doing all those things that everybody said to do. And I was even more broken and stressed out and burnt out than ever before. And then my business failed in 2016. And so I realized that there had to be a different way to grow a business. And so for me, my faith is a big component of how I grow my business. And I partner with God to do something a little bit different than what anyone else was doing. And that was using my voice, and specifically podcasting, to grow an organic audience. And what's so insane is today, 3.5 years later, I have collectively $1.5 million business, almost 1 million download podcast. And I don't use social media anymore. And it's like, this is life, you guys. It is so freeing. So that's really cool in a nutshell. I'm also a boy mom. I love iced coffee and Jesus. And that's really me in a nutshell.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Amazing things. I want to refer people back to your other episode where you talked about the journey before starting the current business that you're in. and all the shifts and all the different things that really got you on this path of, I don't want to do the social media thing. I don't want to do this hustle thing, because you did that for a few years. And then it was like, no, I need something different. And podcasting was really the answer and the path for you. And it's so, oh my gosh, I love this so much, because I remember I was there when you were like, I want to get into podcasting. It's going to be my thing.
Yes.
And it's like, it is your thing. That's so cool. I am so excited about it all. Okay. So a few things that I think people listening are going to be like, wait, what is, how have you been doing this without social media? How is this even possible? I would love a walkthrough of the journey, because it wasn't overnight. Am I right?
Absolutely not. That was many, many years in the making. Let's begin back when I began entrepreneurship as a network marketer, right? And any of you that have been in direct sales or you are in that industry, you know that social media is the way you're taught to build a business. And even if you're not in that industry, that's what you hear online, right? How do I grow a business or get an audience or make more sales? Well, you show up on Instagram and you create a TikTok that goes viral, and then you're going to sell the things over there and you're going to make all the money. It's going to be great. But the reality is that only 1% to 5% of our followers actually see our post, and only for 24 hours. So if you make a post and it takes you 2 hours to make it, and you have 1,000 followers, that's 10 to 50 people that actually see it, just see it.
Yeah.
And are they actually shopping for the thing that you are putting into the world? Probably not. So we feel awkward because we're forcing stuff on people that aren't shopping for our thing. And then we wasted 2 hours because that content is not evergreen, right? So I didn't know those things, and I just did what everybody told me to do. And what happened for me is I just became more and more frustrated because I was doing everything. I was posting here and I had all the stuff going everywhere, and I was trying to do the lives, even though my kids were small, and I was everywhere and nothing was growing. And what really started happening though was I became addicted to my phone. Mm-hmm. I felt so anxious if I didn't click the apps. I was spending, when you would go look in the stats, upward of 7 to 8 hours a day inside of Facebook or Instagram. And these discernment alarms were screaming at me that something was wrong, but I continued to ignore it because I'm doing it for business. Right. You know, that's the big lie that I told myself. And so I kept doing that, thinking this must work somehow, someday, but it didn't work. And over time, I started to have more and more issues with my addiction to my phone and to social. And one weekend we were on a vacation and my phone broke. And the Apple store was like 2 hours away. And I was like panicking. I'm like, babe, give me your phone. I got to log in. He's like, for what? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what if I have a DM? Okay. And he's like, please, like, just relax. You're going to be fine. Well, we had 4 more days, Marta. And I was like, I'm going to die. Anyway, I made it. And here's the weird part. Day 2, something started to happen. I could like listen to my son without something tugging at me. I felt so full of peace. It was like I could see and live my own life again. Like I felt like I had been in this invisible prison and I didn't even know I was in it. And, you know, wow, like I was freed and I felt different. And I said, I don't want to go back. But I have to because I run a business. So I decided that I would get off of social every weekend. So I started deleting the apps. Instagram and Facebook were the triggers for me. And so I would delete them every weekend. And I would look forward to it. I'm like, oh, when's Friday going to get here? Like I started to not enjoy my time there because I knew how different I felt on the weekends. And so pretty soon Sunday would come around and I'd go, just one more day. And I started to extend it to Monday and Tuesday. And then over time, thankfully, you know, I was able to bring on some people to help me out in my company. Yeah. And I realized like either I outsource this whole thing or we just don't really use it anymore, like at all. And I had this tug and I felt like God spoke to me and said, just get off to prove what will happen. Like I needed to prove it to myself and I needed to prove it to my audience because I had been telling them about the weekend social fasting for years, you know? And so I got off for 30 days, completely deleted everything, told the team, don't even log in, don't do a thing. Okay. Let's find out what happens to the business. Cause we were getting, Marta, like 750 to 800 likes per post. I had at least 200 to 500 views and stories. Like we were having great traction on Instagram. And so I really had to test it because I thought, man, this must be making a ton of money. Like it must be converting. Yeah. So we got off. And at the end of the 30 days, every single metric had grown. The email list, the podcast downloads, revenue, everything had grown. Everything except Instagram, right? When I got back in, all the stats were cut in half. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep going. So I extended it another month. And then I extended it another month. And then pretty soon we had made it 6 months of not using Instagram. I personally did not go in. My team was sharing my podcast episode after that 1 month was over. They just post the episode and that's it. And here's the craziest part. The revenue continued to grow. The downloads grew exponentially. The email list still kept growing. Our Facebook group still kept growing, even without me marketing this anywhere on social media. Every metric grew. The team grew. Everything grew. And I got back on Instagram one day to look at the analytics. We had 20 likes per post. Wow. We had 10 to 15 views and stories. And I finally got it. And what I finally understood was all of those likes and viewership and all those things, those were absolutely doing nothing for conversion. They were not converting into sales because everything kept moving without it. But what they were doing was keeping me held hostage, keeping me in an invisible prison of my own making. Well, and Instagram, they're smart, you guys. They know how to create addiction, right? And then what I realized is because I was no longer present, it all faded away overnight. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sticky. I was dead to that platform unless I was going to be there 24/7. And I was done selling my soul to social media. And so now I'm happy to say, you know, like I mentioned earlier, every single thing in this company is exploding 100% without social. And so that proves that there is something else viable out here that can grow a business. And we can do this in less time. We can. And we can also do this with freedom without the anxiety and this tug or this pull that we find ourselves fighting against with social. So that's really where I'm at today.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Amazing. I love it so much. And the fact that you went into the experiment, right? Because that's what it's all about. Like you felt called to this and you've proved it to yourself. And now this is what you teach your clients as well, because you've been there and you know the stats and you know everything else and how it all works. That is incredible. So now you're going to have to tell us, what is it that you are doing then to drive all of this stuff without social media?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, my friend. You know, here's the truth. I have tried everything, you know, much like you. We are entrepreneurship women at heart. We are excited about new fun projects. And I've tried everything. I had tried direct marketing. I had done blogging. I had tried having a YouTube channel for a hot minute. Oh, please don't go watch my old wannabe Sunny Leonarduzzi videos. Okay. It's like, what is happening? I've had a journal. At one point I published a journal. Like I did all these things, right? But nothing seemed to be exactly right for me. But I knew, I'm like, I'm called to use my voice somehow. I know it. Like I'm called to help these women get out of their fear and like really make a difference with whatever their giftings are. Mm-hmm. And I kept praying over this. And in 2018, I had a dream and God spoke into my dream, start a podcast. And I was like, what? I don't listen to podcasts. Like that is weird. That is the weirdest dream I've ever had from God, you know, but I knew if I hear something from him, I better do it. And so I plugged in the only mic that I had. It was a $20 staticky Amazon mic. And I pressed record and I started talking to this woman I had in my mind that had this call in her life, but she didn't know what it was, or she couldn't figure out how to make it into a business. And she knew that she was supposed to create a fulfilling business partnered with the purpose that she had over her life. And so I started there. And as I started to talk about this, you know, it started to make sense. And these women started to search for the terms that I had on my podcast titles, like, you know, how to grow your online business with less fear, or how to know what your business could be. And they're searching these terms and they're finding the podcast organically. And I wasn't even like marketing it anywhere because I didn't know how. I didn't have the money to do any paid marketing at that time. And so I had this aha moment that was like, hold on, I don't have to post weird stuff on social and force people to look at what I have to offer. I post content out there that's automatically distributed to 10 to 15 different platforms with one click of a button, Apple Podcasts and Google and Pandora and Spotify, and it gets automatically posted to social if I want it to, right? And these women, for me, were searching for the terms I had on the show, and they were finding me. And then they were knocking on my inbox like, hi, do you do coaching or do you do anything? Because I really love listening to your podcast. And I was like, I guess so. Do you want a coaching call? Like, sure. So I started sitting down with these women who had organically found the podcast. And within a year, the show had passed 100,000 downloads, 100% organically. And I had crossed $100,000 in revenue from a coaching business that I didn't even know I was a coach. And I'm like, okay, this is fire, right? This is fire. And so what I've discovered now, 3.5 years later, is that podcasting works so much better because do you guys remember the visual of 1,000 followers on Facebook or wherever, 1 to 5% see your post? Okay. You have 24 hours. You spent 2 hours versus you spend 2 hours and you make a podcast episode and you air it once a week. Okay. Same 2 hours and you don't have to do your makeup. So that's legit.
Yes.
Then
Love it.
You click the button and your podcast goes everywhere. Well, imagine the same 1,000 subscribers. Okay. Over 80% of people that are subscribed to a podcast episode will see it, which means the probability of at least half of those people actually listening to the episode is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And we see, me and all of my students collectively, an average of 1 to 2% conversion on one episode. So what does that mean for those of you like, what do you talk? Oh, numbers, help. Listen, if you have 100 people who listen to the show, who actually listen to your episode, that's 1 to 2 sales. That's on one episode that took you 2 hours to make, that doesn't disappear in 24 hours, that you didn't have to do awkward DM conversations to sell. You simply showed up and you talked about what it is that you do. I always love visual examples. So let's say, okay, I'm a meal prep coach. Cool. You did an episode on 3 tips to meal prep in 30 minutes or less. Some mom somewhere in the world typed in meal prep basics, which you had in the title or in the description, listened to your episode and heard you say, would you like a meal prepping mastermind session with me? Or would you like to purchase the meal prepping method course? Mm-hmm. And she bought right there from your episode. So that's when it really just hit me. And it's been proven time and time again by my own show and by all of the students that have gone through my program that this works, and it works no matter what you do. And you just have to have the strategy behind it, right? Like anything, you can't just willy-nilly, I'll start a podcast and they'll make me all the money. There's strategy behind it, and there's SEO, and there's all these things that we have to put into place, but there is so much potential in less time.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, so good. Well, first of all, I was almost going to interrupt you right away, but I was like, let her go. Thank you so much for admitting that you tried lots of things before you landed on this, because we have this illusion that people come out of the womb, this is what I'm doing, and they do it for years and it's amazing. And there is no such thing. I mean, if there's anyone out there thinking this, which we sometimes still do, yeah. Please just, listen to this story and understand that it's, lots of experimentation, trial and error, lots of prayers, lots of tears. And then you finally figure out what it is and you still work on it. There's different layers, even though you found what it is. And that's something else that I want you to share. Now that you've found what it is and it's been growing, what are some other things? But something else I wanted to touch on, really emphasize, is the whole idea of 24 hours. Because that is something that, especially with me publishing my book, is becoming even clearer with. It's not only the fact that we don't have to depend on these crazy platforms that are owned by these crazy people, that we don't know what's going to happen. So it's like, start a podcast, start an email list because you don't know. But it's also a true commitment to your message, because you can't delete your whole podcast. You can burn all your books. Sure. But it's different than the posts that you put out there. And then you can decide that it's, not worth it anymore, or people are not even going to see it at all. So the longevity of this thing is so freaking powerful. Plus, regardless of what happens with the platforms, you have your episodes that you own them. They're there somewhere. You can repurpose them. You can do something with them. So that is an important point. Now tell us,
keep working for you, right?
Exactly. So tell us the other layers to this. Now that you found that, you had the dream, you had the crazy dream of starting a podcast, you launched it, you did your social media experiment. What are you up to now?
Well, you know what's so great is when you start something and you're convicted about it, you have a direction, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure like when you decided to write your book, you're like, I'm going to write a book. Wonder what that's going to be about. Let me sit down and start writing and see what happens, Mm-hmm. You have a direction. But as you are persistent and consistent and you take action, you're not going to know how. You should have seen my busted channel art 3 years ago, right? Like Martha can tell you, I made it in Canva. Okay. Like it's not about, and it's same with you, right, Martha? Like,
oh my gosh, I'm laughing because I'm the same.
A beautiful rebrand. Like you're going to evolve over time. And really, here's what I want you to understand. If you really want to have big success, your evolution is not about you. Your evolution is finally understanding what your person's number one problem is. And everything you do as a company, everything that comes out of your mouth is to solve one person's number one problem. And I really didn't get this until about 12 months ago. And I'm like, the show's stagnant. It was stagnant for a while. And I was like, what's missing? I have the course that solves this thing. And I have this other thing. And we talk about this and this and this. And then, I have these awesome people in my life and they're like, what about like just starting a podcast? I'm like, I'm so much more than that. Mm-hmm. I took offense to like, you can only be one thing. Mm-hmm. But then I realized, you know what? It's not about me. It's about the solution that my person really needs. And when I finally was like, well, they need to start a podcast because that's how I believe that you grow an audience and you get consistent sales without having to be on social, without spending all the time. And so as I fixed my messaging and I fixed my marketing and I got super, super clear on the one problem I solve, that's when we had this big exponential breakout. And so what we're up to now is every decision we make as a company comes down to solving that number one problem for her. And that's every webinar that we create or every email drip thing that we build. Like we have interns now that are writing blog copy from my episodes, only the podcast ones to start out with, right? Because we're here to solve one big, big problem that's happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you go, right? We start with a direction and we know that clarity is going to take years. Refining the eventual, hopefully $1 million business for all of you guys listening is being willing to look at your business and get even more niche and even more small. And of course, you're going to do more things, but you're going to get even more small in the one problem you solve and how that you're solving it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and this is such a big resistance that we have because of exactly what you said. I'm so much more than that. And then we get offended. It's like, no, but you're thinking small. It's crazy, right? Because it's like, I can do so much more. Yeah. But when you think that way, you're actually thinking small compared to the impact that you can have when you zero in into that person and they trust you as the expert in that specific thing. You can't see the bigger picture. And that's back to one of the things that you said that I stand by 100,000,000% is you're not going to know all the details. It's going to look like junk when you start. And that's how it's supposed to be. That's when you know you're going on the right path.
Exactly. Because you're going.
You're going, exactly. And then look back and be proud. And I think also having kids has been such a great example for me of all of this because I see them starting new things and they start already beating themselves up and they compare, especially with being the same age, and they kind of look at me because they expect me to compare as well and to say certain things. And I'm like, I can't, and it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing because it's human nature and we learn as we grow. And oh my gosh, so much juiciness. So tell us more about like specific programs and things that you got going on, and then we'll get into our rapid fire questions. I'm excited.
Okay. I'm so nervous for those. Just kidding. It'll be great. So, I have the podcast, right? The Stefanie Gass Show, where that's really just the free place with 450 episodes, which is ridiculous, of totally free stuff. So that's a great thing. And then we have the Stefanie Gass School, which is phase one is what's the calling? Like, I don't even know what my thing is. I don't even know that I have a calling, or what could my business be? And so that's the first course that people go through. And it really gives you that foundation of partnering with God to create a business, the business that he already has planned for you. We just have to figure out what it is. Mm-hmm. So you walk out of that knowing, what is it going to be called? Who is it for? What am I going to talk about? And then how does it become a business? And then the second course is Podcast Pro University, right? Which teaches you how to plan, record, and launch your podcast into the world. And I am about simplicity. I'm like, you are not going to buy $1,000 microphones. You don't need a studio in your house. You don't need to pay an editor. Like, this is really about keeping it scrappy and simple, knowing that authenticity is going to win people over 100 times more than production value. So my podcasting course is all about, how do we do this in less time? How do I actually grow and touch people's earbuds and hearts as quickly as possible so we can get them a result, and because when you make impact and income, you can do big things in the world. And it's our responsibility to help the people we're called to help. That's truly what I believe. So those are the two starter steps. And then I have a mastermind program for podcasters who want to then monetize, right? Make a course or become a coach. That's what we got going on over here.
Oh my gosh, this is so gold. Stef is the real deal, people. And again, woman after my own heart. Stop with the craziness of the details of editing and hiring people and spending millions when you're not even bringing any money with your business. Stop. Make it simple. Just put it out there. I think if anything, global message for this episode is, it's okay to start imperfect. In fact, that's how it's supposed to be, because otherwise you're just creating problems for yourself because you're procrastinating or because you're trying to be perfect and delaying the process. So just get going. I love it so much. And we'll have all the links and information on your programs in the show notes as well. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. So it's 5 different phrases, the 5 steps in my framework, and we'll start. So the first one, whatever comes to mind, it could be a word. You can expand, tell us stories, do whatever you want. Okay. So the first one is notice yourself.
Okay. So what comes to mind for me here is your giftings, and when we look at noticing ourselves, it's stopping long enough to ask the questions, what am I gifted in? What am I good at? And then being willing to actually write those down and ask the question, what am I supposed to do with that?
So powerful. Next, listen to yourself.
All right. This is not if you have a podcast to listen to yourself, because then you're like, oh, wow, my voice is weird. Do you ever do that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's crazy.
It's pretty funny. But when you listen to yourself, I think this is really recognizing that you have a lot of different voices going on. You have the voice in your mind, and you have the physical world that you live in and all those voices. And then you have the voice that's in your heart. And I know that for me, it means sitting down and removing all the clutter and distraction and saying, what is really going on for me? Why am I really having this emotion or this resistance or these feelings that I'm having? And really listening to yourself and where that's coming from so that you can actually move past it, or look for the clues of what your heart's trying to tell you where to go.
So good. Next is forgive yourself.
That's great. Love that. That's a good one. It's really hard to, number one, forgive others, but sometimes it's the hardest to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
I once had a coach tell me, look in the mirror and I want you to say, I love you. I could not do it. And I was like, this is so dumb. This is so dumb. I hate this. What is happening right now? Anyway, long story short, recognize like there was some stuff going on that I had not forgiven myself for, that I was carrying around some shame of some choices that I had made and things of that nature. And so until you really recognize that you're allowed to mess up, and not only that, it's inevitable that you have made big mistakes in your life, you have failed, you have done stuff you are not proud of. So has everyone. That's the entire purpose of redemption, right? Is that you're allowed to look at that and go, wow, God, how do you want to use that for good? And then forgive yourself, because what's done is done. Let's move forward and let's just go forward with His grace.
Totally. Next is empower yourself.
That's great. So look for the door. This is what comes to my mind. There is an opportunity for each and every one of you, and it's scary and it doesn't feel comfortable, but the door is already there, and all you have to do is walk through it, and you're enough with whatever your life looks like, however unqualified you feel to go through that door. Once you find it, it's your responsibility to walk through it, and you're going to find so much empowerment knowing that you can.
Yes, totally. And last but not least, transform yourself.
All right, keep growing, keep learning. Don't get bored. Don't get comfy. There is always next level growth, and it starts with pushing yourself forward to the next big thing.
Oh, so good. This was so fun. I am so excited that we did this. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll put all the info, and people go follow Stef. Go look into her stuff.
Thank you so much, Marta. Bye, everyone.
Wasn't this amazing? Isn't she amazing? Don't forget to connect with Stef. The links are in the show notes. Go listen to her podcast because it's super juicy, and share your takeaways with us on social media. Until next time. Bye.